Whoever runs Honda's design team needs to be f***ing fired. This shit is ugly as hell. This looks like a beluga whale.
Okay, let's be honest. Sedans are just not doing that well. The Passat has been killed off, the K5 is struggling, the Sonata is struggling, but more importantly, the king of the hills, both the Toyota Camry and the Honda Accord, somewhat still continue to go strong, but have been overshadowed by their big brothers, both the RAV4 and the CR-V, and by their little brothers, which are the Corolla and the Civic, respectively. But I got to thinking, as we are entering into a new world of electrification, hybridization, and many other things, is the Accord still worth the time and energy for Honda, or should they just go ahead and retire it? What's up, guys? My name is Chris, and welcome to the breakdown where we talk about everything cars, news, and reviews. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. So as you all know, for almost 5 decades, the Honda Accord has been the king of the hill, the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme, because in a world where many rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, and many other front-wheel drive sedans just did not do that well, the Honda Accord next to the Toyota Camry ran that race. However, it seems as though that sales have slightly slumped, and I'm being quite facetious when I say that, but the Honda Accord has not been doing that well for a particular amount of reasons. And in this video, I wanted to explore whether or not that Honda should continue to forge on making the Accord, or should they just go ahead and retire it. With that being said, stick around and stay tuned, because you are now watching the breakdown. All right, so getting into it, the Honda Accord, as we all know in the car community, has not exactly been doing it well. You see, the Honda Accord used to be the go-to choice whenever you wanted a practical, reliable, efficient sedan, but you wanted a little more seasoning on the chicken, unlike that of the Toyota Camry for many, many years. But before we get into the state of the Accord, I do want to talk about the history of the Accord very briefly and give you some enlightenment on what's actually going on with the Accord, but more importantly, how we got here. So the Accord was introduced back in 1976 as kind of a mild successor. Successor isn't a great word. It was basically the follow-up to the hit success, which was the Civic. Back in the gas crisis of 1973, as I always talk about, is when a lot of manufacturers shifted and changed hands, and it went from having the hands of the big three into the Japanese and the German car makers. And a lot of people did not like Japanese cars when they first came, but them gas prices humbled y'all. And so as a follow-up, the Honda Accord, when it was introduced, was bigger than the Civic. It was much more refined, came as a hatchback, and a very small 1.6 liter engine. But the difference between the Honda Accord, unlike many other cars, for its power to weight ratio, it was giving similar performance numbers, unlike those of the big V8s of the time. Kind of like why people still drive Mazdas, even though they aren't exactly fast. For what they are, they're extremely fun. And so the Honda Accord from 1976 onward, it was all up, baby. We was up. From the first, second, and third generation, they steadily continued to climb to success, with the 1990 year being the most successful at 417,000 units. The third generation was one of the first times that we had seen a lot more niceties, amenities, and much more, if you will, cool factor from the Accord. And this will also be closer to the time where we see the introduction of the VTEC technology shortly after the Acura NSX introduced it. And towards the fourth generation is really when we begin to see a lot of refinement from the Accord, as the Civic was kind of seen as the boy racer. The sixth generation was kind of a golden era for the Accord, because the sixth generation is the one that everybody named mama had, right? So that was the one that was almost flawlessly designed, and even though it's 20 some odd years old now, it still looks very much a couple of generations ago. It's not that far. With that, the 2001 model year was also one of their best selling years, selling upwards of 415,000 units. Now, shortly thereafter, the sixth generation, while super successful, the seventh generation initially did not do that well. It was up until that Honda had to do a facelift for the Accord for the 7th generation, and that's when more people began to take onto it. Now, between the 1st and 4th generations, there was no V6 option. The 5th generation is the first time that we got a V6 option, and it wouldn't be until that 1995 model year that we would get a small 2.7 liter V6, getting you 170 horsepower. Now, shortly thereafter, there would be V6s and 4 cylinders and hybrids and everything under the sun to help represent what the Accord was was supposed to be. Towards the 6th and 7th generation, we begin to see a successful run, but towards the 7th generation, we will see some downward trends, but then towards the 8th generation is really when things kind of went up. So the 8th generation represents a turnpike in the Honda Accord. A critical key to this story is that the Honda Accord was always seen as a mid-size sedan, and towards the 2008-2009 model year is when we begin to see the Honda Accord grow a little bit bigger and become a large sedan. And so towards the 9th and 10th generations is really when we begin to see the Honda as a large car, so much so that the Civic ended up taking over the mid-size framework of the Accord by 2016, which would be the 10th generation Civic. Now, of all of those things, the Honda Accord was always seen as practical, efficient, and to some degree fun for a larger size sedan. Now fast forward into today, and the Honda Accord is not doing that well, and here are a few reasons why. One of the biggest things that a lot of people have complained about in terms of the Honda Accord is that it is fugly. And I say that with all due respect to the Honda lineup, but the design, even though it has a much longer overhang and it gives a lot more cleaner lines, they're almost too structured. For a long time, Honda was seen as the funky designer. Unlike Nissan, unlike Toyota, and unlike Ford and General Motors, the Hondas were always uniquely styled and designed and character, and they didn't always get it right. There was a few Accords that people did not exactly enjoy. One of them being the 7th generation Accord in its first pre-facelift era. Everybody thought it was ugly. The sedans caught hell, babes. Hell.
Bloody hell.
Towards the latter portion of that, the facelift would give it a lot more refinement, especially with the LED tail lights. But the 7th generation didn't get it right either. But for the most part, Honda Accords have always looked really nice. This new generation does not look that great. With that, we all know that when you look at a car, the design is what really appeals to most people. And while the back looks absolutely amazing, the front looks like a Ford Taurus, and that's been a running joke in the car community for quite some time. The next thing is that the Honda Accord has always been pricey. Comparatively, a lot of people believe that it was always cheap, and you could at one point get a Honda Accord for $15,000, particularly the 1998 model, which was its most successful year next to the 1990 model. You could get the DX model, which is back then, and in today's market and inflation, you can probably get it for closer to $30,000. You are getting a $30,000 stripped down Accord. That alone should tell you the context of which the Honda Accord was never cheap. But as we begin to see the full effects of inflation, we also begin to see closer to what those numbers are. Now, in retrospect, from 20 years ago, the Honda Accord has only increased in price by roughly $10,000, as you can get a fully loaded one for about $40,000. But most of us could not afford that today as we could back in 1998. So that makes a huge difference in the ability for more people to be able to consider sedans. And the other thing is that the Honda Accord was also supposed to be a value-packed package. And there's a few things that happen here. And one of the biggest things that happened for the Honda Accord, like its competitors, is that at some point the lineup got cannibalized. You see, the same thing happened with the RAV4 and the Toyota Camry, and the same thing happened for the Nissan Maxima and the Nissan Altima, and as well as the Nissan Rogue. Compact to subcompact SUVs offer significantly more bang for your buck. And what's kind of funny about that is that the Honda Accord has always been bang for your buck, if you will. But as we as society have evolved away from the low riding kind of practical sedans, because that's what a lot of us believe we had to own, as cars got more expensive and wages began more stagnant, it seemed as though that while you could get a $34,000 Accord, you could get a $35,000 SUV, more space, taller headroom, as well as more safety features and perceived safety features, and that created almost a cannibal-like effect on many of the sedans for the market. As we are beginning to phase out of sedans and into compact SUVs, SUVs have not only become more comparative to sedans in that they almost drive like them, it also has become more performance oriented and more efficient, and these SUVs are becoming almost a casserole of what sedans and trucks used to be. Now, let me tell y'all something. The one thing that I believe really really happened with the Honda Accord is that they stopped focusing on the customer. At some point or another, towards 2005, 2006, 2008, there almost began to be a little bit of a laurel that Honda began to rest on with the Accord. And you start to see that from the design of the 8th generation up until the 10th generation, which is a little more dynamic. But it's almost began to set a precedent that we don't have to do more with the Accord because we know it's going to sell. And it doesn't exactly help that Car and Driver has awarded the Honda Accord 38 times since its inception, and that is unheard of as a record, and it almost gives Honda an idea that they don't have to do anything. As a car enthusiast myself, I can tell you that as we begin to evolve into different spaces like electrification and hybridization, a lot of us begin to feel as though that we are not a part of the thought process that goes into these cars. And with the Honda Accord, there was always something for people to enjoy, whether you were a family person, whether you were a young and up-and-coming professional, whether you were a senior citizen, there was always an Accord for the flavor of the month. And it seems as though that CR-Vs and Civics have almost split that, and now you are either in the Civic or the CR-V, and they give you those different flavors. And none of them quite blended that level of practicality and fun that the Accord offered, in addition to the reliability. And one of the big things that really kind of ticked me off one of the things that really ticked me off about the Accord is when they begin to drop the specialized engines. The specialized engines, while a small percentage of the Accord, is what continued to attract people to the Accord. The V6 from 1995 onward was seen as the higher trim level and the more punchier, more sleeper developed car, and really gave you an idea of what Honda was capable of. In some cases, if you wanted a V6, you almost had to go to Acura, and in today, if you want the 2-liter turbo, you have to go to Acura, and that could be by design. But the thing is that many people cannot afford an Acura as they can barely afford an Accord. And so there is no exciting model for the CR-V, and even for the Civic, you have to go up to the SI and the Civic Type R, which get a little pricier from most people's price tag. Unfortunately, the Accord, with the design and with the dropping of the powertrains, you almost have stripped the Accord of what it used to be. Now, in this new generation, they also are talking about a lot of the screens and a lot of the efficiency dynamics, and it gets this much to the gallon, and there's this much instant torque, and all these things. They're all gimmicks. I'm going to go ahead and tell you now.
They're all gimmicks.
And so the gimmicks don't help a reasonable justification for the Accord, because a lot of those gimmicks can also be put into the Civic and the CR-V, and at some point they will. And so you almost have to question whether or not it is worth getting an Accord at a $40,000 price tag, whereas the CR-V or the Civic Type R for the higher performance trim, or in some cases the TLX, you can get those different models and still get the higher level of performance and efficiency you would ordinarily get from an Accord from 3 different car lines. And that's the real problem. So now that we have these different car models to supplement or suffice for what the Accord used to be, is the Accord still worth building? Now, the Accord is a lot of firsts, and it seems as though for Honda, this might be the first time that it would seem justifiable to basically retire the Accord. And unless we as enough consumers decide we're going to buy the Accord in droves, it almost, from a business standpoint, makes sense to go ahead and get rid of the Accord. And it could be a sad day. There's no rumor of deleting the Accord for now, but my speculation is that if the Civic and the CR-V continue to produce the numbers that they are, Honda's going to have a really hard time justifying keeping around the Accord. As we move on into hybridization and electrification, this is a perfect opportunity for Honda to go back to the drawing board and revamp the Accord to what it used to be, instead of thinking of it as it's going to sell, because it's very clear that it's not. But all of those things aside, the Honda Accord, while practical and efficient and fun, it's looking pretty grim, guys. It's looking pretty grim. But with that being said, you guys let me know what you think about the Accord, and if you think that Honda should retire the Accord in the upcoming years, as there's not really a good value proposition for that. And with that being said, until the next video, I will see you guys later.